The Woodstock Music Festival, which was held in June of 1999, was held in honor of the 30th anniversary of the legendary Woodstock of 1969. The festival that is about peace, love, freedom, and music turned into literal hell.
7 people were injured, including 2 state troopers who were pelted with rocks and beer bottles. Then it ended.
It's a great shame that this event that in so many ways was successful and uplifting had to end this way.
Death and total chaos reigned at the festival in the year 1999.
It was disgusting. I was and I hate all men now.
Show my tits!
So before we move on to this filthy and aggressive child that took place in the 90s, let's speak a little about the original Woodstock. Because after all, even though it was a half a century ago, this festival still appears to us as a celebration of universal love, unity, and peace. But actually, in that very first festival, things didn't go smoothly as well. Woodstock was initiated through the efforts of Michael Lang, Artie Kornfeld, Joel Rosenman, and John P. Roberts. Roberts and Rosenman financed the project. Lang had some experience as a promoter, having co-organized the Miami Pop Festival on the East Coast the previous year, where an estimated 25,000 people attended the 2-day event. Woodstock Music and Art Fair, and that's precisely what the original Woodstock was called, should have been held in a city that holds the same name, just around Ulster in the state of New York. However, they didn't find a suitable place there. Having already secured the support of investors, the concert organizers rented the 120-acre Mills Industrial Park in Wallkill, Orange County. The place was suitable, but the city officials forbade the housing of such a large event. At that time, the organizers expected that the festival will be attended by 50,000 people. The search for a venue eventually led them to a ranch belonging to a person named Max Yasgur, who agreed to offer his land for the festival. They, of course, also provided him with the estimated number of 50,000 people, but the closer they approached the date of the festival, the more people decided to buy tickets. The organizers put on an additional 50,000 tickets, and then even more and more until the number got to nearly 250,000. At that time, the festival had already broken all the records in terms of its large scale and number of attendance. And from the people's perspective, such strong interest for Woodstock of '69 was fully justified by the legendary lineup that was announced. The first performers to agree were Creedence Clearwater Revival. They were announced as the headliners of one of the days. Following in their footsteps, contracts to perform were being signed by other famous groups and performers. In the end, the festival's all-star lineup consisted of such names like The Who, Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead, Carlos Santana, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and many others. As you have already understood, Woodstock of '69 presented itself as 3 days of incredible music. But in addition to that, it became a symbol of the hippie culture, an important anti-war message, and a starting point for the sexual revolution. Here, calls to stop the war in Vietnam were heard, and to withdraw the troops from the territory of foreign lands. Humanitarian values were celebrated there, and the only propaganda that was allowed there was the propaganda of love. It was precisely because of this very atmosphere that Woodstock became iconic. And you and I both, those who didn't get the chance to be there, I'm sure we would have really wanted it. Surely such a large festival, where 250,000 people were staying in the middle of a field, couldn't have gone by without issues springing up. So it's worth talking about them, at least for the sake of comparing the two Woodstocks that we will be talking about today. We begin with the fact that Woodstock was not visited by 250,000 people. There were precisely twice more people. Due to the emergency change in the hosting venue, the festival organizers were not able to put up a fence that is capable of containing such a crowd. Fearing riots, they took the only right decision that there was to take, and that is to make the festival free of charge to attend. So, according to some statistics, the peak number of individuals that were at Woodstock was close to 500,000. The first group of visitors started to arrive at the festival a week before it was set to begin, and by the weekend, the highway leading to Max Yasgur's ranch turned into a never-ending traffic jam. Movement on the highway was simply not possible, as people were leaving their cars on the side of the road or directly on the road and were going the remaining few kilometers on foot in order to take part in this legendary event. Blocked roads led to yet another issue, and that is insufficient food supplies. The delivery of food rations became impossible, and available stocks were enough just for only an expected 250,000 people. The only thing that helped people stay strong was granola, which was being given away for free by the festival organizers. There were surely a lot of drugs at Woodstock. Acid was sold everywhere. It was sold for pennies and was of very low quality, which led to many people having bad trips. One of the hosts of the festival even announced on the mic that the brown acid that was being distributed on the territory is dangerous. Many, while under the influence of substances, harmed their eyes. They said that they just laid down and stared at the sun with their pupils dilated and ended up receiving burns. It was drugs that led to the first death at Woodstock. You heard that right. At the Festival of Music and Love, 2 people lost their lives according to official reports. There was an 18-year-old young man who was due to head off to Vietnam. His death is often attributed to a drug overdose, but Time magazine investigated that he could have had a heart problem brought on by hyperthermia. The other death was sadly a 17-year-old teenager who was run over in his sleeping bag by a tractor collecting rubbish. Another problem of the festival was the weather. It started heavily raining from the very first day. The roads and the grounds were washed away. People were ankle-deep in dirt, slept out in the open, and some musicians refused to perform due to the risk of getting electrified by the wet electronics. There were not enough toilets. Trash was piling up everywhere, and the number of medics on site was limited, so not everybody was able to receive help in time. 3 days in a fairy tale world? Doubt it. The organizers just didn't imagine this much people would attend. And here's yet another spoiler. At Woodstock of '99, there were roughly the same exact problems, minus the rain. Nevertheless, despite all the efforts of the media to present Woodstock as a gathering of stoned bums and traitors to their motherland, the efforts didn't work. The festival became a symbol of an era and was forever written down in history as one of the most romantic, great, and significant events in music.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And do you know what the third day of Woodstock of '99 was called? The day the music died. So what was so different between these two festivals? And what went wrong in '99? By 1999, the idea of bringing back the original Woodstock was absolutely not a new one. The concerts held in honor of the 10th and 30th anniversaries of Woodstock took place in the years of 1979 and 1989, respectively. Both of these events were not officially called Woodstock. They were just commemorations of the great festival, because they didn't carry the name Woodstock and because they attracted a much smaller audience. For example, the concert in 1989 was spontaneous. It was organized by musician Rich Bell at the same location where Woodstock of '69 was held. Any group was able to perform there, and the event was free for everyone, including artists, which is why at the festival, beginner and not very well-known groups mainly perform. And the advertisement for the concert was solely through word of mouth. In the end, this event got the name The Forgotten Woodstock. The first full-fledged attempt to revive the real Woodstock took place in 1994, in honor of 25 years since the first festival. The organizer was the very same person who organized the original Woodstock in 1969, Michael Lang. He understood that the atmosphere in the 90s wouldn't be the same as the one that was in 1969. Nevertheless, he still wanted to show the modern youth what peace, love, and music really are, and to give them a chance to experience the atmosphere of the legendary Woodstock. As a partner, Lang chose the influential concert promoter John Schur from Metro Entertainment, who had experience organizing concerts of similar magnitude and had a personal team. This attempt didn't go smoothly either. The festival in 1994 got nicknamed as Mudstock among the public, and as you've already guessed, the main problem was the weather conditions. The event was held at Winston Farm, just west of Saugerties, New York, nearly 110 kilometers from the location where Woodstock of 1969 was held. The festival was advertised as 2 days of peace and music, However, due to the significant interest in the event, the organizers added a third day on Friday. On the first day of the festival, they faced hot and dry weather, but by the next day already, during midday, a storm began with continuous rains. The water eroded both the grounds on the field at which the concert was being held, and people were literally taking a mud bath. People at the festival, already completely soaked from the rain, were wrestling each other in mud, throwing dirt at each other and rolling in it, trying their best to have fun. The canonized groups who made the festival an iconic one were 9 Inch Nails and Primus. The first group dirt wrestled in the mud before getting on stage, and they went out to perform looking like this. The second group, during the performance of the song My Name is Matt, were pelted with mud. In essence, the next Woodstock, which was held in 1994, encountered the exact same problems. Besides the 160,000 sold tickets, the actual number of participants exceeded 300,000 people. This led to there being insufficient supplies, a shortage in medical personnel, not enough guards, and many more problems. The hosting venue was enclosed by a chain-link fence. This allowed people to easily enter without tickets and smuggle in whatever they want. The least of what they smuggled was alcohol, as the guards simply couldn't control everything that was happening. According to the organizers, Woodstock of '94 didn't go so bad if you don't take into consideration the weather and those who entered without tickets. John Schur, one of the organizers, announced that the festival didn't even bring in a penny of profit because of those who snuck in without tickets. At Woodstock of '94, there were officially 3 deaths. More than 800 people were sent to hospitals, and more than 5,000 received medical help on site.
There were almost 1,000 injuries of various descriptions. This man maintained he didn't want to leave until he'd seen his favorite band.
And then we get to Woodstock of '99. And it was organized by the very same Michael Lang and John Schur, the promoter. This time, they decided to fix all the mistakes that had happened, and in the end, make maximum profit. The idea of the organizers to make as much as possible by cutting as much costs as they could was the first taste of the upcoming disaster. Even though you can't blame people for wanting to make money, this time they genuinely took it too far. The location that hosted Woodstock of '99 was chosen to be a former military Air Force base in the city of Rome in the state of New York. This choice proved to be faulty both from the ideological and practical points of view. It's weird to host the jubilee of an anti-war festival where chants of peace and love and pacifism prevail on a military base. Even though it could be argued from the standpoint that this was a former military base and that it's no longer needed and that the violence is gone and it's part of the past. But honestly speaking, for the American youth of the 90s, this wasn't really an issue. As for practical purposes, the base was not truly a lucky pick. It was almost entirely covered in concrete and asphalt. The concerts took place right on the runways. This would have been a good choice if it were to rain again, as it did in Woodstock of '94, as dirt wouldn't have been such a big issue. But the organizers once again didn't predict the weather. This time, the heat rose up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun's blazing rays hit the concrete and asphalt, and people in front of the stage were standing in an actual oven. Many got heat strokes and suffered from hypertension, as the medics, as usual, were not enough. In addition to that, people suffered from thirst. They were forbidden from bringing with them water and food. All the rights to supply food and drinks were sold to a single external company that had no competitors. This gave way for the company to price items in the way they wanted. For example, if the regular price of a bottle of water in the year of 1999 was 60 cents, then at Woodstock of '99, it cost $4. And we won't even get to the prices of food and alcohol. And these prices continued to rise. By the end of the weekend, the same bottle of water cost $12. For those who had already paid $150 per ticket, which is equivalent to $260 in today's money, it was particularly infuriating. But for the lineup that was announced for the festival, people were willing to endure the inconveniences and long queues. There were 186,000 tickets sold for Woodstock of '99, according to the organizers. In reality, the festival was attended by nearly 400,000 people. The majority of them did not sneak in without tickets, The organizers simply intentionally underreported the number of tickets sold so as to not pay the $5 commission to local authorities for each ticket sold, exceeding 200,000. As I've said before, the organizers decided to save up on everything to increase their profits as much as possible. Maintenance of the toilets, drinking fountains, garbage disposal, and medical help. All of these were sold to external companies in the form of subcontracts. And either they didn't get a large enough budget, or they themselves attempted to cheap out, but all of these services were very poorly provided. There were not enough toilets. They were not cleaned up often enough. There were very few trash cans, and by the end of the first day, there was trash everywhere throughout the territory. There were also not enough fountains, medical personnel, and guards. Generally speaking, everything that had to do with comfort and safety was terribly organized. All of that led to disastrous consequences, which I'll tell you more about a little later, because all that happened just on the first day. And people, even though they were a little irritated by the prices and the services, they still enjoyed the freedom and the excellent music. Woodstock of '99 differed from the festival of 1969 by the public itself. Some of those who attended were expecting the same atmosphere of love, freedom, and peace as it was in '69. But others didn't give a shit about the peace and love. They perceived freedom differently.
Fire! 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 Peace, love, destruction! Freedom and peace, baby, is who I'm.
Many journalists and attendees noted that the festival was literally full of toxic masculinity. Oh yeah, at Woodstock of '69, people also went naked. But at the time, nudity was a manner of an expression of freedom and unity with the surroundings. In '99, many also undressed, but instead of freedom and the spirit of unity, women encountered being sexualized, being groped, harassed, and even raped. There were no less than 5 officially recorded cases of rape, but in reality, there were much more cases. Yeah, many didn't even give a shit about the music. For them, this was just a giant party without restrictions.
Show my tits? You'd have to pay way more than you paid to get in to see my tits.
And now about the performances themselves, and about who distinguished themselves. The opening of the festival was by James Brown at the main stage. Then Jamiroquai, Live, DMX, and The Offspring performed. People were still in a state of euphoria that they're actually at Woodstock, and they didn't really pay much attention to the problems around. Everyone was waiting for the main group of the day, and for some, it was the main group of the entire festival. When Korn got on stage and played their first song, the crowd lost control for the first time. Aggressive and wild energy was released from the people. In a crowd of thousands in front of the stage, there started a very intense mosh pit. Getting out of there unharmed was something very few managed to do. It was in this very moment that it became crystal clear that the festival will have nothing in common with Woodstock of '69.
Come on, Woodstock!
This was an even more dangerous and aggressive festival. What played a defining role in this was not just the people, but the music as well. The end of the '90s, groups that performed heavy, aggressive music gained popularity. The trendiest genre at the time was nu metal, and the emotions called on by such a genre were not comparable with the atmosphere of the psychedelic songs of the '60s. It was around that same time, at the Western stage, that chaos was also ensuing. The crowd went out of control when the hip-hop duo Insane Clown Posse threw at them swords with banknotes glued to them, giving this gesture a sarcastic comment. Everybody, of course, tried to grab the money, which led to a terrible stampede, even escalating into fistfights. At the Eastern stage, the task to calm down the crowd that was fired up by Korn was taken on by the group Bush. The lead singer of Bush was one of those who specifically came to Woodstock of '99 in hopes of witnessing the peace, love, and music. He wholeheartedly tried to calm the crowd down and set them down the right path, and he managed to do it eventually. By morning, people faced a hangover by all sense of the word. When the sun rose, a depressing picture was shown. mountains of garbage scattered across the entire territory, overflowing bins that nobody cleared up, and bio-toilets that were filled to the brim with waste. Using them was not possible. The stench was unbearable. There were drunk and stoned people laying everywhere, and the sun, blazing from the very early morning, didn't allow any single chance to hide away in the shade. Many were already burned from the day before and complained of the thirst. The temperature rose even higher than the day before. It was in this very condition that the festival attendees welcomed the first performance of the second day, the Canadian group Tragically Hip, whose music was perfectly fitting for the people's moods.
I feel Woodstockerific.
Next up on the stage was Kid Rock. His performance was powerful and energetic and made history at Woodstock of '99 thanks to the fact that he created an avalanche of garbage which he had caused by the end of the show. When it was time for the final song, he asked the viewers to throw in the air everything that had fallen in their hands, but that's so nobody gets hurt. In the end, we got an entertaining but catastrophic plastic-filled spectacle. The idea was caught up by the next performer, Wyclef Jean, who further worsened the situation with the garbage. In the meantime, the situation with the water became worse. Irritated people stood in long lines for the fountains from the very early hours of the morning, and they just couldn't handle it and simply broke the water pipes. Large streams of water flowed onto the ground, but it brought with it no relief. The water mixed with the waste from the overflowing toilets, forming a stinky swamp. Some festival goers, whilst under the influence, decided to host fights in the dirt as it was in the year of 1994. But actually, this time, they didn't shower themselves with regular muddy dirt, but with a mixture of water and feces. Joyful people smeared with excrement from head to toes were captured in many pictures and videos, and became a part of the dark legacy of Woodstock of '99. But the scariest problem of all laid elsewhere. The waste ended up in the water plumbing system. The fountains from which the people got their life-saving water from turned out to be biologically contaminated, but the majority found out about that too late. Despite the obvious problems, the organizers continued to pretend that everything was under control, but the public needed a release of emotions. And that release came in the evening during the performance of Limp Bizkit. Limp Bizkit's performance simultaneously became the best and one of the worst in their entire career. They played so violently and powerfully that the crowd literally went crazy. People were in a state of ecstasy, ready to go completely wild. The crowd understood all of what Fred Durst said as a call to action. And here, he had a choice. Seeing how aggressive the public had become, he could have tried to calm them down. He could have told people to keep their cool, but it wasn't within his spirit. Instead, he added fuel to the fire.
How many people here ever woke up one morning and just decided it wasn't one of those days and you're gonna break some Well, this is one of them days, yo!
After these words were uttered, chaos ensued. People jumped, shoved, and fought. They tore off sheets of plywood from the sound tower and used the sheets to ride on top of the crowd. They trampled over the barrier and climbed over the stage structures. The guards had to evacuate the sound engineers as the tower could have simply collapsed. After Limp Bizkit's performance, there were hundreds of casualties, broken limbs, head injuries, and people who've lost consciousness. The entire arena was full of blood. The medical team couldn't keep up, and many were sent to hospitals. There was an enforced break to be able to somehow provide help for the injured. When Rage Against the Machine got on stage, many feared that they would take it a step further and also add fuel to the fire. Their music was aggressive and the lyrics were rebellious. However, on the contrary, they tried to maintain a friendly atmosphere. Their performance was powerful, but under control. The second day was concluded by Metallica. Their set went by without any particular incidents, as the visitors were already tired out by the day's chaos. But the third day, oh, that was just wild and crazy. People woke up dead tired and bitter. The heat, the rise in prices, the lack of regular water, the lack of money for food, and the general fatigue forced many to leave the festival early before it ended. There was already a traffic jam by midday on Sunday. Those who stayed took out their anger on everything that got in their way. Chaos ensued. People began to break the 4-meter fence, which was put up to keep those without tickets from sneaking in. They snatched off the sheets of plywood and crushed them, destroying entire areas of the barrier. The soothing music that could be heard on that day could not tame them. For sure, some people still enjoyed the performances by the stage, but another group of people were busy dismantling at the same time. That evening's main headliners were the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Part of the public endured that day just for them, while another part of the public impatiently waited for the secret guest, about whom there were rumors circulating for 2 days already. People placed their guesses: Guns N' Roses, Prince, the Rolling Stones, or even Michael Jackson. When the Red Hot Chili Peppers got on stage, the crowd erupted. Flea hovered around the stage wearing only socks, and there were dozens of naked people in the crowd. It seemed that, in that moment, the festival experienced the exact same spirit as that of Woodstock of '69. But their performance didn't go so smoothly. In fact, it was the beginning of the end. To end their set, the organizers decided to distribute candles to the public so that people can light them up during the performance of Under the Bridge. Michael Lang personally came up with this idea. He loved it when visitors held candles in the air from the time of the very first Woodstock. And so, 200,000 people held up 100,000 candles. And that became the most illogical thing that the organizers could have done. At the entrance, many flammable items were confiscated to prevent fires. And now, these very same organizers themselves distributed flames to 200,000 exhausted and annoyed people. The candles were lit, and Under the Bridge turned out to be one of the most beautiful and soulful moments of the festival. But towards the end of the song, bonfires started to burn. People broke off pieces of plywood, stacked them in piles, and lit them on fire using the candles. This initially seemed just like innocent fun, but the fire quickly started to look menacing. The organizers tried to call firefighters to put out the fire hazards, but the firefighters refused to get through the crowd. It was just too dangerous. The concert was halted. Everyone tried to get the situation under control, but it was all in vain. Red Hot Chili Peppers then once again got on stage and performed their final song. It was a cover of Fire by Jimi Hendrix. Later on, the festival organizers accused Chili Peppers of provocation. The musicians in turn said that performing Fire was a request by Hendrix's relatives in honor of his performance at Woodstock in '69. Furthermore, they had already planned initially to conclude with this song. But for the crowd, this became a signal. They didn't consider Fire to be a tribute, but instead, they perceived it as a call to light the entire grounds on fire. Moreover, these fires were already blazing everywhere. People started throwing everything they could get their hands on in the fire. Sheets of plywood, chairs, and tables. But even after the concert was over, the crowd didn't disperse. They waited for the secret guest. Instead, the host came up on stage and said, "Thank you for being with us, good luck, and be careful on the way home." The crowd went nuts. The disappointment turned into chaos. When the fires in front of the stage became too big, the crowd rushed deeper into the territory of the festival, destroying everything in their path. People swung and knocked down a huge lighting tower. It was only by a miracle that nobody died as a result. The crowd then made their way to the market stalls. There was still cash in the registers in them. These tents were quickly leveled to the ground. The ATMs were open and the money was taken. Groups of people overturned cars and set fire to them and looted the offices of the organizers. Surely this didn't pass without injuries, but by that moment the medical personnel couldn't do anything to help. It was total chaos, the outburst of uncontrolled violence. A state of emergency was implemented in the city. To disperse the crowd, the National Guard was called in due to the alarm. By Monday morning, the festival site on the military base in the city of Rome in the state of New York looked like a scene out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Only here, there were no props needed. People leveled the place to the ground. At a press conference, the organizers of the festival announced that there were some minor issues. They placed the entire blame on the visitors, calling them bastards and trailer park trash. But in general, according to their words, the festival went well.
Thank God, no one got seriously hurt. No permanent damage to any real buildings, but it's inexcusable, the behavior of these couple hundred knuckleheads.
After Woodstock of '99, the word Woodstock itself stopped being associated with peace, love, and music. It became clear there would never again be any Woodstock 40 or Woodstock 50. That era has passed, and now not us nor anybody from our generation can experience the atmosphere of the year of 1969. The next video I recommend you watch is about what happened with the group The Black Eyed Peas. Bye, everyone!